Como with MLB.com. I guess when did you first catch a whiff that something like this might happen, and what was just the timeline of your eyes of that and the trade actually coming to pass?
How you doing, Anthony? Yeah, first, I just want to first start out by saying thank you to the Mets organization for welcoming me into their family. Found out on Friday, so last Friday, the trade went down or was announced Sunday, but I got a call from my agent, and I was training at the time, so I took the call, and I just heard that something might be happening between, the Mets and the Rangers regarding me. So he said, just keep your phone on and he'll get back to me. He called me later that evening. He represents both of us, Brandon and me. So he knew what was going on both sides. He knew that there was a no trade clause on Brandon's side that we were just kind of waiting on. So that's what my weekend looked like.
I guess what was maybe the level of surprise, and what do you know about the Mets and what they're trying to do here?
Yeah, I mean, I know in this business anything can happen. I think that based off of the talk regarding where the Rangers were and the talk regarding where the Mets were, I knew that anything was possible. Um, I'm excited to join a ball club that has good veteran players, great veteran players, Hall of Famers, and strong young players that look hungry. I got a chance to sit back and watch the series in September. I had an injury, so I just sat back and watched, and I liked the passion that, the Mets players were playing with. I like the young pitching staff that they were putting out there and the stuff that those guys had. And I've just been thinking about that series and imagining myself on that side now, and it makes me really excited.
Thank you.
The next question is from Mike Puma.
Hey, Marcus, Mike Puma from the New York Post. Just wondering, David Stearns yesterday referred to you as a winning player. Um, how would you define that? How do you define a winning player?
How you doing, Mike? Yeah, you hear that a lot in this industry. I heard that a lot with my former president, Chris Young. That's what people are looking for in this industry. I think that for me, a winning player means somebody who's going to go out there every single day and give it their all, sacrifice themselves for the team, put their body on the line for the team, and go out there and play baseball, trying to do the things that help you win the game. That means for me, that means scoring runs, producing runs, trying to keep the other team from scoring runs on defense, running the bases well, taking care of all the fundamentals that baseball demands of us, and doing a little bit something extra to get a win for your team each night.
And as a veteran player, how much will you look at part of your job bringing people together in that clubhouse and making sure everybody's on the same wavelength?
Yeah, that's very important to me. That's something that has always been a goal of mine in whatever clubhouse I'm in. I started out as a young player with the Chicago White Sox. I was traded pretty early in my career and traded to my hometown in Oakland, where that was the best example, at the time when I got to Oakland of what a brotherhood looked like. I moved on to Toronto where, it was a younger group that had the same thing where they all came up together. And as I got to Texas, it's just meeting new people, understanding who you're playing with, also understanding your staff, who you're working, playing for with the coaches. And I think everybody aligned to go out there and give it their all and put forth their best effort to win baseball games is, a culture that I want to be a part of.
Thank you.
Bruce Beck.
Hey, Marcus, welcome. What would you like New York fans to know about you?
Thanks, Bruce. I'm a God-fearing man. I'm a family man. I am extremely passionate about the game of baseball. I've been playing this game for, almost 31 years, right? Started out at, maybe 29 years. I started out at 6 years old. And I haven't stopped since then. I fell in love with the game at a young age, growing up in the Bay Area, watching the San Francisco Giants, Oakland A's teams, and just continue to get better and better each stage of my life. And as I became a professional, I realized the kind of player I want to be. I want to be a player who plays every single day. I want to be a player who runs every single ball out. And I want to be a player who is talented. Talent is also important in this game. So I'm still doing that, and it's a huge part of who I am.
At 35, 13 years in the league, how much do you feel you have left?
I want to play until they tell me to go home. At this point in my career, it feels extremely good to have a team that believes in me, sees what I do well, wants to help me. Um, Offensively, I think that I still have a lot to offer. I'm disappointed in the way that I performed offensively last year. Had a good start in 2024, and I think that just having conversations with Jeff Albert, and I'm looking forward to talking to Troy Snitker about what I need to do to be that MVP caliber bat in this lineup. Is my goal.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Albanese.
Hey Marcus, Laura Albanese from Newsday. I mean, you're coming into a clubhouse that obviously has a big veteran presence, but also a lot of youth in there as well. I mean, just how do you view your role as a leader? What is your leadership style, and how do you think you'll fit into the kind of that entire amalgamation?
Hi, Laura. Yes. My style as a leader, it's definitely something that, has evolved. I think the one thing that has remained constant for me is leading by example with how I work, leading by example with how I respect each member of the organization, treat everybody like a man or a woman, whoever you're working with. Um, and for me, I'm mostly talking about my teammates here. Respect them, help them through tough times, get to know them as a person, get to know their families, so that when we go out to battle, we know how each other is going to react. I think that's part of being a leader too, is you don't just go out there and play baseball and go home and you don't talk to anybody. You build relationships with your guys. Um, that may mean more time off the field spent together. That's something I'm very um, passionate about, is making sure we spend time off the field together too. And all those things can help once we're out there on the field.
Thank you.
Abby Mastracco.
Hi, Marcus. Abby Mastracco from the New York Daily News. It's not often that two sort of franchise faces on long-term contracts get traded for each other. You and Brandon Nimmo are probably experiencing some of the same emotions right now. Just kind of what are the emotions of going from, a place where you thought you would be playing for a significant amount of your career to a new place now?
Thanks, Abby. Yes. It it was surprising, just understanding that, hey, I signed here on a long-term deal 4 years ago, but once again, like I'm very conscious of what's going on in the business side of baseball. And just kind of paying attention to everything. So in the back of my mind, I knew something could always happen. And my family, we're a family of seven. We just had our fifth child 3 weeks ago. Those kind of things logistically we will work out. But in terms of baseball itself, I couldn't be more excited to play in a large market, play in front of a fan base that brings the energy every single night, because that brings the best out of me. So that's the part I'm very excited about.
And sort of going back to your offense, what did you find in late May and June when it looked like you had a pretty good stretch there and some of the power started to come back?
Yeah, I came in, I think it was like right after a series we had on the road, tough series for me. We had St. Louis coming in, a team that was pretty hot at the time. And, I talked to Justin Veely and Brett Boone, our hitting coaches in Texas, and I said, hey, I don't want to tinker every single day trying to find something. I am who I am. Let's perfect something this series. Let's continue to work on the same things and build off something. That night, I think I went 4 for 4 with, I don't know, a homer, 2 home runs maybe. It was just a good day. And I continued that through June. Got to the All-Star break, came out a little slow, and then I felt like I was finding my way going into September and broke my foot. So, unfortunately, the season did not end health-wise the way I wanted to, but I felt like I was, going to finish strong and get us into the playoffs, and it didn't happen. But, that May and June was, definitely the hottest I had been last year, and there's definitely some things that Jeff Albert and Troy Snitker and the rest of the hitting crew will, just look at what I do when I'm at my best and help me better understand those things because sometimes as hitters, we just go off field and maybe we don't know exactly why it's working, but we go with it. But a lot of information has been coming my way so far.
Mike Fitzpatrick.
Hey, Marcus. Mike Fitzpatrick from the Associated Press here in New York. You mentioned the large market, New York City, the large market. You're no stranger to large markets, having played in Chicago and Dallas. But what are your thoughts about playing in New York and in front of these fans and everything that brings?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think that when people ask me what's your favorite road city, I say New York. I love being in the city. I grew up on the West Coast in a, similar environment, San Francisco Bay Area, maybe not as large as New York, but in terms of culture, it's definitely a place that I really enjoy being. And now I get to do what I love in that city in front of fans that love the game. There's a strong history with the Mets organization. There've been great players who came through there and done some good things, and I just want to be one of those players.
And one other thing, David Stearns and the Mets have made no secret that they're very eager to get better defensively this offseason. You're a 35-year-old middle infielder. It's not necessarily easy for a 35-year-old middle infielder to be considered, such an excellent defender and moving forward. How have you been able to do that? What's the key to that for you, and how much pride do you take in that?
I take a ton of pride in keeping my body healthy, making sure my defense is on point because you want to make sure your pitchers feel comfortable making pitches, pitching to contact. I played shortstop for the first half of my career in Oakland and made the move over to second, and I feel like the transition was definitely easier making throws and really just focus on what balls I can go get. How many balls can I go get in the infield that may have been base hits that I can take away. And I feel like I've been doing a solid job at that since I made the transition. When I was first in Toronto, it took me an entire spring training to kind of relearn all the intricacies of second base. And, the last 4 years, I've definitely found a home there, so winning the Gold Glove was special to me, especially where I came from earlier in my career, where defense was the question mark and the bat was what everybody was excited about. So it's been cool.
Andrew Tretnick.
Hey Marcus, welcome. Andrew Trenick with NorthJersey.com. I'm just curious, what was kind of the biggest takeaway from you from winning the World Series back in 2023? Obviously, joining a team that has those aspirations.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, winning the World Series in 2023, I've never been so emotional after a game. I just remember hugging my parents, hugging my dad just with tears of joy. You know what I mean? It's just the ultimate, it's the pinnacle in this game, winning the World Series. And the way that 2023 Rangers team did it, sneaking into the playoffs after having a strong start to our season. We kind of just like had a lot of ups and downs in the second half, figured out what we needed to do at the end of the year and got really hot at the end. I think that that was a special way to win. There's a lot of ways to get in. There's a lot of ways to win the World Series. We did it with the strong offense and, a lot of players who played good defense and the bullpen figured it out and it was, just a special time. But during that season, we also had our daughter, our fourth child, during the playoff run. So it's just a year that I'll never forget.
You touched on the injury a little bit. Obviously, you've been, really durable throughout your career. What was kind of the biggest lesson from that, and how are you feeling physically right now?
I'm feeling great. It was a foul ball that I fouled off my foot and cracked a bone and sprained a ligament at the same time, either when I went down from being in pain or, on impact. We still don't know how it happened, but that was a tough one because like I said, like I told Abby, I felt like I was on my way to having a strong finish to get us into the playoffs, and it didn't happen. Watching Major League Baseball for that long, was something that was new to me, recently. So I learned a lot. I tried my best to help the young guys, especially the guys who were playing second base, like Cody Freeman, Josh Smith a little bit, and Ezekiel Duran, because I knew that I had been there for so many years without any injuries. So anything I could do to try and help the guys, I did. In the meantime, in the clubhouse, I just tried to continue to be myself. Whether it was just keeping the guys loose, rooting on the guys, playing cards, whatever it was I could do to keep guys in their routine, I was trying to do my best.
Mark Sanchez.
Hey, Marcus. Mark Sanchez from the New York Post. Welcome and thanks for doing this. Your numbers last year were way better on the road than at home, which was true of really of that whole Rangers team, where it seems like Globe Life was not the most friendly place to be playing. Just did it feel like that hitting environment deflated your numbers any? And could it be helpful to play somewhere else?
How you doing, Mark? Yeah, I think everybody was trying to figure out, why the ball wasn't carrying as much. Um, we had a great home record though. We still had one of the best home records in the league. Our pitching staff thrived at home and our defense played really well. So nobody was, feeling like, man, we can't figure it out at home because we're winning. In terms of everybody's individual years, I'd probably say as a right-handed hitter playing at Globe Life, it definitely played a little bigger to left center. My game has always been to try and pull that ball over there so you can get it out a little easier. But um, I'll never make a ballpark that I play in an excuse for why I didn't do well. There's always ways to work around certain things that may not play to my strengths and figure it out. That's what this game's all about. When I think about Citi Field, a place that I haven't played too often, but when I have played there, I've really felt good seeing the ball well there. Looks like the guys had some good numbers at home, and historically they say it's a pitcher's park, but when we got in there, it looked like a lot of offense. So, I'm excited to go over there and see what I can do.
Thank you.
Mike Mancuso.
Hey, Marcus, welcome and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Was wondering if you had ever gotten to meet Brandon Nimmo at all, and can you talk about replacing him in this trade, so to speak, and maybe your thoughts on playing with Francisco Lindor in the middle of the infield? Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, Mike. Yeah, I've met Brandon once, and this was in, I think it was West Palm Beach during the lockout that we had, union stuff, right? We were trying to get back on the field, and Brandon, I know he was a player rep for the Mets, with the union stuff, and we were mostly talking about that kind of stuff. It wasn't necessarily a baseball conversation. me being in the AL West and Brandon being in the NL East, we did not cross paths too much, but I've always respected his game. I see how hard he runs. I see how hard he plays defense. He's been a fixture, for the New York Mets for 10 years. He came up as a high school, first rounder and made it all the way through and had a great career in New York, signed a long-term deal. And, I think for Brandon, Texas is going to be a good place that he fits in, very well in that clubhouse. His game will definitely play well in that ballpark. I mean, I know he can go get it in the outfield, and I know that he's got pull side power, which will play very well in Globe Life.
Mark Healy.
Hey, Marcus, welcome to New York, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Congratulations on the birth of your latest child. I want to talk about or ask about what Mike just talked about with replacing Brandon Nimmo, not just in this trade, but also Brandon's one of the most popular Mets ever since he's been around. So it's definitely one of those situations where the pressure of replacing it's a combination of the pressure of replacing a really favorite player, but also playing in New York for the first time. Do you feel that like you're prepared to deal with that double-sided pressure?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I guess I didn't fully answer the question about replacing Brandon. I understand how good of a, clubhouse presence Brandon was. I understand, how much of a fan favorite Brandon was. And I feel for the Mets fans when you lose a player who's been present and who's been such a fixture in that lineup and in the community and, has a great personality and such a nice guy. I feel for the fans. For me, I want to get to know the fans, get to know the community, let my game do the talking. And I think I definitely will be a presence in that locker room that guys can lean on. That's always a goal of mine to be that for my teammates. I'm excited to join two leaders in Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto. When I said Hall of Famers, those are the two guys I'm referring to. I'm excited to learn from them, bounce things off of them, and just, fill in a way that, hopefully Brandon, things that he did, hopefully I can fill in and do as well.
Jared Sadler.
Hey, Marcus. When you signed with the Rangers, they were coming off a 100-loss season, and in 2 years became World Series champions. What were some of the highlights for you over that 2 year stretch to go from where the team was when you signed that first year, which I know was a little rocky, to then make that huge leap? But just the process of transitioning from where the team was to where the team ended up being after that 2023 season.
Good, good to see you again, Jared. Yeah, it was a tough first half of 2022, coming in, trying to, just see what went wrong in 2021. You mentioned it, 100-loss season. I think when the team let go of Chris Woodward and let go of John Daniels, it was very eye-opening because, signing a long-term deal with an organization and seeing that big of change in leadership mid-year, was like, okay. But I understood that Chris Young was going to be in charge, and I listened to Chris Young throughout the free agency process and his vision. And I know Ray believed in it. And he told us it might take some patience year one. And then we got into 2023 and everybody had a career year at the plate. And we were guys that already played good defense. We had strong starting pitching. We lost DeGrom, early on, so that was a shakeup, but to Tommy John. But everybody continued to swing the bats well and play the best baseball of their career, and it all came together. So that time was special. Building those relationships with the guys in Texas is something I'll never forget. We made Texas our off-season home. We put our kids in school here. So just being around the community, especially at my son's baseball tournaments and saying hi to young kids who may be Rangers fans, those are times that I'll always cherish.
And our final question is from Mark Rosenberg.
Hey, Marcus. Mark Roseman from KindersCorner.com. Welcome to New York. Two-part question. The first part is you mentioned that you had got wind of the possible trade on Friday until it was completed. From that interim part, did you start calling around or even speak to like Jacob deGrom or guys on your team that have played in New York to find out a feel for that? And the second part of the question is you're known as a guy that always posts up until last season, that freak injury. You play in almost every single game. The guy that's going to be playing short does the same. And if the Mets signed Pete, he's another guy. Have you thought about being an infield at 3/4, never miss a game? Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll answer the second question because it just excites me to play with guys who post every single day. That's something that I learned with the White Sox organization. I came up in the minor leagues with the White Sox. My farm director was Buddy Bell. Buddy Bell's baseball card has a lot of 161s, 162, 160, 159. As my career has gone on, it looks similar. There's some years where freak things have happened, but I'm proud of that. I got to talk to Buddy this season at a Rangers event because he was a Ranger as well. And we just laughed about it. I told him, he really inspired me to continue to play every day because I feel like when I play every day, I get better. Experience is key in this game. Playing every day, getting better throughout the year is something that I want to do. In terms of, Friday, how it went with the trade, Scott, my agent, was really adamant about keeping things quiet. So I didn't talk to many people about it. Of course, I talked to my family, Tara, my wife. I told my kids, just trying to prepare my family for what's ahead. Once we got to Sunday, I called Max Scherzer. He's a guy who's played in both places. He's a World Series champ, 2023. I just asked him a lot more about family stuff, more than baseball stuff, because I know he has 4 kids of his own and just kind of bounce some things off of him about, how we're going to do things moving forward. But other than that, I had to keep quiet on it, really.
Marcus, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And we can't welcome you quick enough, get you into Queens. We're excited to have you. Thanks again. And to everyone on the call, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, guys.